What are 4 reasons to return to the alpha and beta versions of Minecraft? Hello, everybody. I am your host, the Mealtime Professor, and today I will be talking about just what it is that makes these older versions of Minecraft so good. And I am going to start with my first point, which is the block palette. Now, it's very important to remember that the older versions of Minecraft don't have nearly as many blocks. And this adds a certain level of simplicity that you just don't see in the newer versions of the game. Now, I shared a quotation here from a well learned person suggesting that there's been a lot of research to imply that restrictions can actually help foster creative thinking rather than hinder it. And this is the sort of thing that you see in the older versions of Minecraft. There's a certain simplicity that actually adds to the experience rather than subtract from it. And if you don't believe me about this concept of simplicity adding to something rather than taking from it, then I encourage you to look at this quotation from an older text that I found. It reads the following: Plato, the first philosopher of art, identified beauty with simplicity, harmony, and proportion, and Aristotle held the same view. Now, these are two of the greatest philosophers of all time, and they seem to agree with this idea that things don't really have to be very complicated to be beautiful. And I shared this with you just so you know that this isn't something that people who love the old versions of the game purely for nostalgia are just saying to defend their position. There is actually some merit to this idea of simplicity adding to creative projects. Now, the second reason I think these games are so great is because of the atmosphere that they provide. Particularly in the case of Alpha Minecraft, where a lot of vibrant green colors are used. And green can actually have a pretty significant effect on the human mind. There's some research to suggest that the color green can improve mood, increase creativity, and even enhance cognitive functioning. Now, these are things that actually lend themselves pretty well to the Minecraft experience, especially in the case of enhancing creativity. So, there's another aspect of the older versions of Minecraft which I think is really cool, and this is the terrain generation. When you play the older versions of Minecraft, you notice that the worlds that get generated are pretty wacky. And you see a lot of things such as these very weird cliffs and mountains, and floating islands are also pretty common too. And this adds a very surreal element to the Minecraft world. It seems that in newer versions of the game, they've been trying to replicate this feeling that the older version had, but I think that the older version just does it very, very well. And there's something else to consider here too, is that C418 actually composed the Minecraft soundtrack for these versions of the game. Now, if you've listened to C418's Minecraft soundtrack, which it's very likely that you have, you'll notice that the music is generally very relaxing, but there's a few parts of the score that make you feel a little uncomfortable. And I think that this is intentional because the old Minecraft world felt a little sterile and empty because there weren't as many mobs or plants around to interact with. And it creates a sort of a lonely feeling that isn't really replicated in Minecraft today. And I think that this is a big reason why Herobrine was such a big myth in this time period. A lot of people just felt like there was something or someone else with them, even on a single player world. And this is especially relatable when you consider the fact that there's a lot of suspicious quirks that occur with the terrain generator. I can think of a specific example where I was talking to a friend and we were discussing Herobrine, and he thought that Herobrine might have been in his world. And he was talking about some of the things he saw, and one of the things he mentioned was he saw a pyramid in the sand, and he said it was perfect. He used that word. He saw a perfect pyramid in the sand. And I've had a couple of strange things happen to me with the older versions of Minecraft too. I remember I got hit with huge lag on this one world that I was playing, and it essentially made my world unplayable. And then I logged on to it on a stronger computer later on, and for some reason, like 100 pigs spawned by my house. So there's just a lot of weird stuff that happens in this version, and Herobrine happened to be a very convenient explanation for why some of these things happens. Now, my third point is going to be about the gameplay loop. Now, it's going to be a little hard for you to see this on mobile, so I'll describe it to you. Basically, the Minecraft gameplay loop goes as follows. You gather resources so that you can build, so that you can survive, so that you can gather more resources, etc., etc. And there's a few ways in which this branches out, even in the older versions, but for the most part, it's a very simple experience of just gathering resources, building, and just trying to stay alive. Now, this changes a little bit later on, but before we talk about that, I want to get into old Minecraft's armor mechanics. And it's important to remember that in these stages of the game, the protection your armor gave you was based on its durability rather than its material. So this meant that leather would protect you just as much as diamond armor would if you had full durability. And the debuff to using weaker materials was that they would degrade faster, so you couldn't keep this high level of protection for as long of a period as if you were using stronger materials. But it means that excess resources can always be used to craft fresh armor, so you can stay at a pretty powerful point with just iron. Now, when I first played these versions, I didn't really like this armor mechanic very much, but now that I've gone back to play these older versions of Minecraft, it's honestly become one of my favorite features because iron is always useful and you don't really feel like you have to have diamond armor. All you really need is diamond tools and just iron armor, and you kind of are in the late game just with that alone. Now, when Minecraft Beta 1.8 comes out, a lot of things change. Sprinting gets added, hunger gets added. So this is part of the reason why people say that Beta 1.7.3 is the definitive retro Minecraft experience. There are still a few changes that exist even in this version that people don't like. I think the cobblestone texture gets updated at this period, so a lot of people don't like that, but it still has a lot of the core gameplay elements that are associated with old Minecraft in it. So if you're looking to get this experience, try out Minecraft Beta 1.7.3. One of the biggest changes that takes place in the full version of the game that I think really changes the gameplay loop is the addition of enchanting. This was especially true back then, where you needed to have level 50 to get the best enchantments. And not only did you need level 50, but you had to spend all those levels to get the enchantment, and you didn't even know for sure what that enchantment was going to be. In fact, you had no idea for the most part what you were going to get when you enchanted something. And this changes the gameplay loop because a large focus is placed on getting the most powerful equipment. Before, you just needed diamond tools and iron armor, and now you don't really need to have enchanted gear, but you really feel like you're missing out if you're not using the enchanting mechanic. So it kind of shifts the focus of the game, and it's not just enchanting too. The Ender Dragon gets added. Now, I like the Ender Dragon. I think it's a pretty cool feature, but it does indirectly take away from having to create your own goals in Minecraft. In these older versions of Minecraft, you have to do that because there is no Ender Dragon, so you have to create your own goals or play on a server where there are some goals. But having an Ender Dragon does take a little bit away from this idea of creating your own goals. And I think I remember an interview with Notch where he was talking about the addition of the end game for Minecraft. And he says something like, I added the Ender Dragon because a lot of players felt that games need a goal. So I suggest that you never fight the Ender Dragon. I'm pretty sure he says something like that. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I do remember hearing something like that in an interview where Notch suggests that you don't even challenge the Ender Dragon just so that you can keep enjoying creating your own goals in Minecraft. Before we move on to this final point, I would just like to ask you to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. I plan on making a lot more content related to game design, so if this is something you're interested, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it very much. And another thing I'd like to do before we move on to the final point is I would like to share the quotation from that old text just one more time, because not only does it talk about simplicity being an important aspect of beauty, but harmony is also a very important element as well for Play-Doh. And this brings me to my last and point, which is Minecraft in these older versions just feels like a very harmonious experience. A lot of updates, in fact, all of them, take place within Notch's leadership. And it's also important to remember that there are no mob votes at this point in the game. So it really feels like it's the vision of just one developer. Now, I want to stop here and say that I mean no disrespect to Mojang or any of the people who work on modern Minecraft. In fact, I feel like they've made quite a few very good improvements to the game. But there's something to be said about the old Minecraft experience just being Notch's vision because everything just feels like it fits. You don't really have to take anything out of it. And what you see here on the screen is an example of one of the worst offenders in this regard, in how it relates to modern Minecraft. The Phantom is a mob that a lot of people hate, and a lot of Minecraft servers will just turn off Phantoms entirely because they just don't want to deal with them. Players really don't like the experience of having to deal with Phantoms. But in old Minecraft, you don't really have anything like this in the game. Everything has its place, so there's no need to really take things out of it. I would just like to give a special thanks to Dialko and Pitfall for their videos. If you're looking to learn more about the old Minecraft experience, I highly suggest checking out some of Dialko's videos and not only watching some of those videos, but looking at some of the comments that are posted on them as well. Some of those comments explain it better than I have in this video, so if you're interested in learning more, please do that. And I'd also like to thank you very much for watching this far. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again soon.